You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast.
Hello, welcome to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Its purpose is to discuss horror films, both old and new. I'm your host, Saul Muerte, and we're continuing the theme of looking back at a couple of the Stuart Gordon movies who sadly passed away just fairly recently. So we're dedicating a couple of his movies that he's done, and we're about the third one in. So if you haven't caught our previous ones, we've had a quick look at Reanimator, which was a massive classic, and we've also looked at From Beyond, which I found a newfound love for. I had seen it many years ago, and I'm digging it once again. I want to go back. I tell you. So it's a good one to mix up. So we're ploughing on though with the third choice of the Stuart Gordon films, and we're going to be looking at Dolls. And I thought it quite suitable that we should bring on board fellow podcaster Richard Lovegrove for this one. Welcome aboard, Richard.
I'm young at heart, I guess. Hello.
Hi, buddy.
How you going?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Thank you for joining us here.
Anytime.
So, and the reason I might have been a bit cryptic here, but the reason I've got you on board for this one is because you joined us not so long ago for our discussions on Puppet Master.
Join us.
Which was also by Charles Band and his production company. So, and Dolls in particular came out 2 years prior to Puppet Master. And we were just talking off record how there's a lot of similarities between the two. I'm not just with the creature, with the special effects that's on show, but also just the style and approach of the film, because it's, that in this particular one they get kind of holed up in this kind of back of beyond mansion run by this elderly couple, and likewise Puppet Master was set up in a weird mansion, wasn't it? In like some kind of
it was like a hotel or something.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at Demonic Toys as well, which is also part of the same production company again with the band guys, is that it's that one was set in kind of an abandoned toy factory. So there is this kind of huge building kind of structure that's kind of isolated and out the way, where these little creatures come to life. And so it's kind of interesting one. So before we get into the nitty gritty, we were just chatting off record, but I'll ask the question to you again. When was the first time you watched this, buddy?
I hadn't seen this before.
Yeah.
I'd seen the poster. And the good thing about these old 80s movies and iconic movies, not necessarily 80s movies, is when they have good artwork, or it used to be in the day when you would walk around the Video Easy or the Civic Video or whatever, you would see all the posters up. And I used to love walking through the horror section because it was always this creative artwork. And this was one of the ones that I remember seeing, but never really wanted to go near because I was like, it looks too creepy. But finally getting to sink my teeth into it was really, really enjoyable. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. I had the same reaction actually when I watched it. And equally, it was one of those ones that had passed me by, and I like the journey of it. I think it was kind of, it's a bit raw around the edges, but it kind of more than makes up for the plot that unfolds. So I really enjoyed the journey for this one. And I know we're kind of going out on straight off the bat there, and kind of placing our thoughts on the film quite early on. But it's also, I think, I'm slowly realizing how much I really dig Stuart Gordon's direction. And it's becoming all the more so for kind of having now revisiting a handful of his films, how cool he was as a director.
No.
And he had a certain visual style which I think it was unique, and this is carried on in this film too, despite, as I said, the similarities to the band stuff later on. But there is this kind of, what I'm trying to say, this kind of, not just kind of the gore factor, because he was known for the kind of amping up the gore, but also this ability to kind of throw humor into the mix, which I really enjoy the way he handles that. So it's not all kind of doom and gloom. There's a bit of kind of lightheartedness that's not cheesy.
Exactly.
You know, it's quite fun. So
exactly, and it keeps that sort of thing, even with the sort of moralistic thread that it sticks without it, and you're hoping that it sticks by it. Even from the very beginning, like, you know, you get a sense of this sort of, it's off kilter creepy, and the good thing about creepiness is that it's on that border of where things are okay. It's in that uncanny valley, so that when you see that Star Wars Princess Leia thing, which they've recently redone on the deep fakes and done it a lot better. But you get this like sense of unease purely because your brain is trying to find it's doing the processing for you, and and then you get into that sort of creepy valley there. It's why clowns and everything like that sort of became very creepy and popular. But a lot of horror films sort of try and do it, and sometimes it's because of budget, but a lot of the time it's because of the direction and because of the flow of how you're executing each of these shots. There was a couple of shots in this that sort of reminded me of Ed Wood and how he would make films, how he would just suddenly cut to stock footage. And like in the early bit when they're sort of driving in the car, they had this hard cut to the storm and then hard cut back in the car, and it's passage of time. But it felt very much like, you know, off kilter from that. That was the only bit really that felt to me that it was, you know, a budget film. Like, you know, I don't know what the budget of the film was, but it didn't seem like it was massive, but it also didn't seem like it was anything to sniffle at.
No, that's right. And I will probably look that up while we're chatting off the side. I'll be interested to see what that was. Oh, there you go. So the budget was $2 million for this one. And
nice.
3.5 at the box office, so a small profit. So, but you're right. It's. I mean, it relies on the effects, which again is, as just to kind of mention again, is part of what the Charles Band kind of and Brian Usna combo had established. To arc back what you were saying as well, like the poster art for it, and you know, again, my early memory of it was the poster art of it in my local video store. With, you know, like with a doll holding up its eyeballs to the you know.
Well, I also was looking into it as well, and I could be wrong, but I feel like this is one of those films where they designed the artwork for the film, and then they had to build the premise and write a script around the poster.
Is that right? That's because it's actually one of the most notable moments in the movie too. To be, you know, from my it was a pretty gruesome point.
And especially because of like modern effects and things like this, but it's sort of ripped apart a bit now. But I think if one thing we learnt from the remake of The Thing was that sometimes less is better. It's like, you know, that idea of trying to paint over too many things will make it look like it's been painted over. Like, you know, even when you exactly first get that first glimpse when it's in the back of them and they don't realize that she's sitting there and it sort of has a flash of lightning. It's creepy because it's in the same scene with them, and it's moving and the light is viscerally affecting it. The good thing about these old films is that they take time to show what those real things are, even if it's stop animation or if it's including puppetry and things like that into it. There was even a scene in this which I was thinking may have been a green screen or some form of chroma key where it's in the final battle with Punch, but running around the table. But it could easily have been done with strings and things like that. Magicians, a lot of the time when they're doing floating acts, this is revealing a little thing, but it's anyone who does know magic knows. It's a very fine thread in which you'll sort of loop around like a button in your jacket or something. This and it allows you to look like you're suspending something in midair. And the easiest way to do that, to get the finest sort of thread to do that, is to pull apart nylon stockings. And that gives you the sort of easiest thread, and you just sit there for hours and do that. But if you were filming it, it won't show up, especially if you're lighting it right. And a lot of the time they'll pump smoke onto the stage so that you won't see the threads. It'll sort of distract you. Processes like that, exactly. In these older sort of films, it is like even Tom Savini style. It's practical stuff where it's the tricks of the trade that make it individual and make it so much more impacting.
No, it's certainly cool. It's certainly cool. All right, so look, so those listeners out there who have kind of followed us for a little while, you know the drill by now. We kind of start kind of dicing and dissecting the film going through the plot narrative. So this is what Richard and I are going to do now, and as we talk through it, and we'll deviate slightly off from that as we kind of comment along the way. So hopefully you've seen the film, and if not, you should definitely go check it out, and then come back and listen to us and rant and rave. Or if you're not that bothered, let's just hear us kind of rant and rave anyway. So let's take a look at it. So we open up the film, as you said, it's one of those kind of typical. It reminded me a little bit, the Rocky Horror kind of moment where we have people driving to driving through a country lane with the rain and lashing down. Sorry, Richard, what were you going to say?
No. I was just going to say before that with the I thought you were even going to say in the title cards how you have the lips coming through the black in Rocky Horror. You have the single heads of each of these dolls with the opening credits, and it's nice also. Sometimes when you put on an old movie that you sort of can go, okay, well, I'll get settled in now. I'll get the cup of tea or whatever, and be able to watch a film and listen to an overture pretty much. It's really just all it is. It's carrying on from those original days where you're allowed to have a score beforehand and an intermission in the middle and stuff like that. Sometimes a lot of these films, one of my favorites is The Bad Seed. And they actually, it was a play that they had on stage, which they had just filmed, I think on the same set and everything like this. And at the end, they would film the actors coming out and bowing and everything like that, and it's a surreal sort of experience when you think of now how modern films are made. But even from that title sequence, it's sort of, I liked its simplicity, and it's like, you get to see some of the dolls in their funny looking faces and stuff like that. Stuff. But it's that was nice. And then you go straight into this sort of like situation where it's the three of them in the car. And you instantly suspect that it's the mother, father, and the daughter. But something's off. Like, someone's upset about something, and she's clinging hold to a bear sitting in there. But it is. It feels very much like Rocky Horror, because you get the storm sequence, which very quickly happens into it after having a little bit of dialogue about saying, "Oh no, that's right. This is later on where she starts saying, 'You're not my mother.'"
It's like, "You're not my mom."
Exactly.
I don't know what point as well, but they do drive past the two girl hitchhikers as well.
That's right. That's like the opening shot. It's the two hitchhikers on the street, and the car speeds around a corner, and they fly off the side, laughing and giggling and swearing at them. And they're English. That's right.
Very
English, like sort of rockers and punk rockers. And the husband says, "You almost hit them." And she says, "Do you want me to go back and try again?" It's like, oh, okay, cool. I like it. It's the setup.
That already tells you the humor of the piece, right?
Exactly.
Where we're going with this. The lady that's the stepmom, if you will, is Caroline Hurdy-Gordon, who used to be married to Stuart Gordon, and she was also in Reanimator, and as one of the nurses at the beginning and at the very end.
Oh.
And she also crops up in From Beyond as a bit more of a meteor role, again playing a doctor in that one. So,
cool.
So she was.
Yes, of course. I remember her, and she's got big square glasses in Reanimator.
Yeah. So obviously she was married to the director, but so it's a bit easy to kind of get apart, maybe. But just mention her in the mix. And as I said, so we've got her and the actual father, who was played by Ian Patrick Williams. The character's name is David Bauer, and his daughter Jodie, and she is already noted early on that she has a pretty active imagination and has these kind of like vivid kind of daydreams during the mix, and we see kind of various pockets of that along the way. And they kind of are driving along, and they kind of end up kind of getting banked up, don't they? In the car getting bogged down in the dirt.
Yeah, they get bogged.
Yeah, and we can tell by the way the dad is that he's a bit of a dick, straight off the bat.
Yeah, they're both a bit of a dick.
Yeah, there's a lot of dick there. And
one dick and one cunt.
Yeah. And it's like, they're just they're not pleasant people. And we already feel for the girl that's in this predicament where it's never really said. Oh, it's kind of implied that that she has to she has to spend time with her dad, and that they're potentially fighting for custody. I think it's said in there from memory.
Yeah. Later on, they're talking about child custody and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Payments and things. But that's where you get the thing where she says, "Mummy says don't swear," and she says, "You're not my mummy."
Yes.
Rosemary.
Mary.
Rosemary. But it also, like, I liked in these sequences too that it was her driving as well. Like, she was the one who almost hit them. It wasn't him. I didn't know if it was going to go that route of setting up that she was going to be more of the villain than him. But they seemed just as bad as each other.
Yeah. It did start that way, didn't it? Like, you do feel like she's the one that's pulling the punches a little bit at the beginning.
Yeah, and I didn't know if it was a more like Macbeth sort of vibe. Same when we get to the house though too, but it's not, and I like it.
Yeah, and I mean, she's also the one that's got the money as well. So she's
we established that exactly later when they're in the bed.
So that kind of lend weight to him, kind of sugaring up to her a little bit rather than the other way around.
Yeah. It seems strange too with the dynamic that she was automatically sort of pissed off that he has the kid. What is he bringing to the situation if he's not bringing the money? He's bringing a kid, which is negative. It's strange motivation from that point. That could be the reason of the tension. Man. Yeah. Who knows? And the good thing I like about this too is that there's not really a lot of exposition before they get to the house. It's all done in their interaction. We understand that they're just not nice people, or their morals aren't in the nicest place. Because even after they've gotten bogged, and I like going into sort of the process of going, well, what have you got in the boot? If you've got cardboard, stick it underneath. Like, you can got to create something to chock it so that it gives it something to go with. But anyway, when they get out and start walking along, and she's makes the justification that she's going to move faster without the teddy bear. So she's either really stupid because it's obviously not as heavy as a person. It's not cumbering her from walking like this. But either that or she's extremely cruel, or maybe a bit of both. They sort of even out each other at this sort of area. But,
that's right. And so you're right. And so she does, as they're kind of wandering along, she picks up the teddy bear and throws it away into the bushes. And this is another example of where we get this over-imaginative kind of child where active imagination. And she imagines this kind of giant killer teddy bear stalking through the woods and basically kind of ripping apart the stepmom.
Yeah, and the stepdad too.
And the stepdad as well, that's right. Yeah. Oh, the actual dad.
And it's great because at the end of that, she looks at it and she's just like, "Oh, Teddy." And he just like holds his hands up and goes, "What
I thought you wanted me to kill these stupid people."
It was great. And then she gets flicked on the back of the head by the mother-in-law character, and it's obvious that really hurt the kid.
Yeah.
It's like, shit, ow.
Like, acting? No.
It's just like, we don't need to do that. We've got sound effects for that crap.
That's it.
I like that too, because even with the subtlety of that, they had walking up there and stripping the bear from her and throwing it into the woods. You still had the silhouette of him up on the this hill, backlit in this sort of very The Thing poster sort of style. So even with shots like that, they're still taking care of stuff. But then there's multiple times that they realize the property's there. There's when they're in the car and they look over and say, "Oh, look, there's a light." And then when they're walking up there, which also too, when they're in the car, it's pouring down with rain in the car.
Yeah.
Then suddenly,
stop.
Suddenly, it's all gone. There's just a big puddle that he steps in.
Yeah.
It was also a lot darker. But anyway, that they see the house and so they start trudging up to that because that was just a hallucination from the little girl.
Yes, that's right.
Which I was kind of hoping it wasn't going to be. I thought it was going to come back a bit later on. It was going to actually have a massive teddy bear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big teddy.
Hey. Yeah, but it was, it's still cool and innocent, as you say, to throw in that sort of humor element where she's in the know. Because it's a dream as well. She's in the know and sort of it shows what she's feeling too on the inner side because she's like wants that dream to happen. She's fantasizing about it.
Yeah, that's it. So they eventually reach this abandoned. Well, it looks like an abandoned kind of mansion in the middle of nowhere, and they break in to the cellar to try and get out of
They do
Right.
try the front door first. They
They do. Oh,
rat-a-tat-tat
that's right.
on the door.
Nobody answers. That's right. They go,
No,
what
they do.
Yep,
And
yep.
and I like the fact that they sort of even took the time to show that, because there's not really in that scene, in that shot, anything else that's spoken about the house besides that it might be huge, so that you might not hear it at one end of the house because they're just
Yeah.
knocking.
Yeah.
But also too, there's a little bit more character development there, I think, between the mother and the daughter. Well, the stepmother.
Still on the
It might just be purely because I was thinking the whole time when she was holding onto the kid, don't rip her arm out of the socket. Because there was a lot of shots in this where you sort of get that impression of just going, oh, how safe is everything? This is the 80s.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah, but no, it's that's what I mean. It still feels like it has a pretty light-hearted sort of effect towards the whole like film. So even at this point, then they go to break into the cellar. They find an open door that opens suddenly, and when she's told to go in, she doesn't want to go in, and they do this great little out of the wings vaudeville style pulling in from the arm. Like so you see the mother-in-law's hand coming out and then pulling yeah. So yeah, exactly, and exactly they're so closely intertwined that in a horror film, it's hard to go, here's a boring story that then leads into a climax and a big shift of horror element.
Yeah.
So adding elements of humor as well adds the levity and certain elements of personality, which can't be afforded to in just cramming dialogue or expositional dialogue in there. And I think a lot of people sort of forget that, but it needs to be natural. It's the same sort of thing with acting and stuff like that. You can't just be going the whole time going, no, I am this person. You just got to go relax and give in to your instincts because you know what you've got to do in that sort of circumstance.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of which, the young girl who's in this is a great little performer. She doesn't have too much to contend with, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but I am thinking things like, was it Poltergeist? Or some other films where I'm sure, Jurassic Park even. I mean, that would have been awfully traumatic, the scene when they're doing the animatronic T-Rex coming in through the top of the glass. And even though they have, I think it was Colby's Law way back in the teens, which was, I think it's Colby's Law. It's the child's law protecting them, the actors, if they're in a film, because their parents ran off with a whole bunch of money and spent it all, and so he didn't have anything to his name. So he took his parents to court, and they won. But I think it's only something like 15% that they have to save. They out of the money. And back then too, it was a lot worse than now. They didn't have anything like royalties or anything, so even people like Mickey Rooney had to work up until his very old age because he wasn't able to make money off all of those classic films from MGM and things like that he and Judy Garland have participated in, just because the laws were different back then. And once they had that contract, it was all their footage, it was owned by them, their likeness and everything. So it was very hard to get out of it. It just that's why I was thinking about pulling the arm out of the socket too, because you're thinking about the animals in these early films and you're thinking about the children because of exploitative films and just saying, no, keep your head under the water for longer, as in whatever. But yeah. So they finally get inside the house, and it's cool because you have another sort of slapstick bit where she hears something and you sort of see a little puppet in the corner, or you're not too sure what it is. It looks like a little naked demon or something like this. Or as they say later on, like a little pygmy race or something like that, which was just like, but yeah, she steps back and trips over and runs into Ian Wallace or whatever his name is. And he falls all over these big stack of boxes, and then the timing is brilliant because then this stack of like wicker furniture, just sort of like wicker baskets, just lands in on top of him, and he just goes nice or something like that. It's some sort of great response. It's just like it's cool because also too there's no cuts in that. Like you get to see the whole fall and everything. So even if it's as flimsy as you go, they wouldn't get knocked over by that, you can still give it up to chance of just saying, well, everything happened there and they reacted accordingly. So it could be comical or it could be a false scare. Because after that, then you instantly get the scare of the door opening at the top of the cellar stairs.
Yeah. And
which has the
owners are in the house.
I was going to say grandparents, but no, the two elderly people.
Two elderly people, yeah. So there's Gabriel Hartwick and his wife, Hillary. And, they open up the door and greet their unwanted visitors as they arrive. The guy role for the guy that plays Gabrielle in this would actually crop up in Puppet Master 3, 4, 5, and Retro Puppet Master as Andre Toulon, who was one of the designers of the puppets. If you're a fan of the series, he was a British actor, and he was earlier on And Now the Screaming Starts, which was another horror classic in British circles, at least. And with a plethora of stuff to his name prior to that. He was a veteran actor. And I also want to mention Hilary Mason, who plays Hilary Hartwick in this, mainly because she's the blind psychic lady in Don't Look Now, which is one of my all-time favorite films.
Oh, nice.
And I was just sitting there watching it when I was watching Dolls, and when she came in, I was like, wait, that's and she's laughing. Sorry.
Yes.
Bit of quote. So I was kind of like, oh, awesome, she's in that. That's brilliant. So that got me a little bit excited. So
brilliant.
Yeah. So with all that said and done, as I said, they enter the room and there's a bit of a moment, but they're a bit frosty at first, but then they kind of turn out to be just kind of supposedly kind of kind-hearted couple, and they invite them to stay for the night. Which was kind of interesting. And
they greet them with a shotgun as well,
yes,
a double-barrel shotgun, which is all old style, and they're wearing their sort of old attire. A man who can pull off a cravat. But sort of change their tune when they see her, and as they're being led up the stairs, the old man has more of an interaction with her and has a great quote too, where he says, "You aren't afraid of the dark, are you?" And she goes, "No, just what's in it." It's great.
Yeah, that is cool. I did like that line too. And that, what I will touch on something, going back to something you said as they entered the house itself, and you said with the door kind of suddenly opens, it's almost like the house itself is luring them in without them realizing it. There is this kind of magical fantasy kind of element that's at play within this film.
Because she keeps referring to fairies and elves, and I'm not too sure if my mind instantly went to when there was a newspaper article way back when with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, I think it was, and he validated a letter and a photograph of a girl took in her garden of fairies, or what she thought were fairies, and he said yes, they were. And it was, I'm not too sure, but instantly that's where my sort of head went when referring to that. So even though it's like a very Evil Dead sort of shot, it's a very sort of mystical realm. And a lot of people too, I don't know if people understand the folklore of fairies itself, and fairy tales are very dark. Like
they are.
Even with Tinkerbell and things like that, she can only have enough room for one emotion at a time. So it's like, it can be very chaotic, and they're a lot creepier even in the original texts to the modern day amplifications of universes and stuff like that. But it's really interesting, and I found it interesting too that she kept on referring to them as elves or pixies or fairies and things like that too. But again, even from the original sort of religious works, tricksters and stuff like that were like the first gods, way back in the sort of the Celtic days. And they would to explain certain things away, like disease or cattle dying, or any sort of thing that would happen in your community that would be awful. So it's always come from even a dark root of our fears. Which has been fairy tales. So it's good. Even things like Troll, as cheesy as they do it, can be done creepy. And I guess you've got the Creature of the Black Lagoon and even things like that sort of more take that sort of route. But Lovecraft brings those sort of two elements together, the sort of natural and unnatural in our minds. And there's so many different applications of it to it. Even with Reanimator going from one element to then expanding onto different elements, i.e. being the thing. Like, you could start have the reanimator films and the idea of like a Pet Cemetery sort of thing,
Yes.
or the idea of creatures actually coming and growing out of the side of you like an alien.
Yes.
And yeah, that's what's brilliant about these films as well, because they have all of that in the cinematography, and then these two characters that come in and bring you into it, but are so welcoming. And that's what it's brilliant. They tried to replicate that, I guess.
And I think that's what's kind of cool about it, is that they are kind of this elderly, kind of really inviting and that warm couple. That makes it all the more eerie as to what's at play, and I liked that component. Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. And so when they invite them into the house proper, that's when I think they're in the kitchen or they're getting ready to eat or something, and that's when we get to three other people kind of enter the scene, and we see the two hitchhikers again from the first scene, but they're also accompanied by Ralph guy, this kind of bumbling kind of American dude. And
Ralph's great.
Yeah, I liked his character. Yeah, played by Stephen Lee. But yeah, he was a cool little kind of bumbling kind of dude with a big heart. And so there's this. I do want to mention too that the one of the girls who she plays Isabel, so she's a bit more of the feisty of the two punk kind of rock chicks. He's played by a lady called Bunty Bailey, and if she looks familiar, it's because she's the chick in "Take on Me" by Aha in the video. Which kind of was a big kind of thing for me. It was like I was again had a similar reaction in that I was like, I know you from somewhere. I've seen your face, and I had to kind of Google it and find out. And that's when it struck a chord. I was like, oh yeah, that's her.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So she did do one other thing in her life, at least.
At least it was an iconic thing.
Yeah.
I think most people would turn around and go, "Oh, that video clip, yeah." That was a great video clip. I loved that. Video clip.
So iconic.
It reminds me a lot of the Somebody That I Used to Know video clip by Gautier.
Oh yeah, definitely with the I can understand that. Yeah.
I do like it when they do a lot of sort of like mixed art in music videos. It's not just photos of the band playing the music, which obviously can still be done artistically, but OK Go as well do some fantastic things with stuff like that.
Yeah,
but even too, I didn't mention at the beginning, like the soundtrack to this, it's beautiful and it's perfect too, because it just sounds sort of like a music box, and it has that element that you know what you're getting into, but it also gives you enough comfort.
Yeah, that's right.
And all films, like the music is such a key. It's such the
definitely
emotional motivator.
And it's when it's played slightly off key as well. Like that's where it's music becomes such an important part of a film because it does it suddenly makes it unnerving because it doesn't sound right. To the human ear. When you play, what I'm meaning, not off key, it's when notes that are played together that don't marry, and and that's where it becomes odd, and especially when you're playing with like you said, with that kind of very kind of toy, kind of keyboardy kind of sound that they're playing with there, with it, and not keyboard, as in like xylophone kind of sound. So it's kind of cool. So
and what all makes sense is too that everyone's introduced to each other, sitting around a table when they suddenly burst in out of the rain and crazy. But they are so accommodating. They give them food and then say, "I'll show you each to your rooms."
And they'll go along.
I'll give you a tour of the house after we show you your rooms. Breaks that promise.
And there's a deliberate kind of play of separating them up. Again, they respond more kindly to the Ralph character. But what was weird was that they deliberately separated the daughter from her guardians.
Well, what I like about that too is it sort of makes sense when they're walking down the hallway, and already you've had that moment where he's stayed back and checked on her, and then they walk into the next room hand in hand, and the little girl hears something behind a door, like giggling, and
That's right. Yeah.
He says, "What are you okay? Or what did you hear?" And he says, "Oh no, it's just my imagination." And it reminded me of Haunted Honeymoon. Oh, that's just my whoops. There goes my imagination again. Love that film. But yeah. So yeah, and then even at the dinner, you got this sense that they were definitely had more of the well-being of the child in their hearts.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because it's a child,
No.
so much as she's appreciative of what they're doing. And even if you stripped everything away from it, it's more like that the hospitality was there. Like, as in accepting the hospitality and being kind and nice to each other and just wishing everyone well, was all you needed to do. It's like that sort of Saw thing. But you instantly get off the bat, there's these stereotypes almost of people, so that when Ralph gets in there and he's like this sort of like giggling, sort of like schoolboy still, and he's pressed for the question, do you like toys and dolls? He's just like, well, yeah, but no. And so I was hoping at that point, like, they were hopefully going to give him a chance. But they show them to their rooms, and says, oh, the little girl won't be sleeping with you in the same bedroom. I thought you would appreciate that. And it was just, I like that cold delivery. It was just like, he's great, that guy. Yeah. But and then you see they show the other girls to the room and they're smoking in it and disrespecting it and playing loud music and whatever.
That's it. That's right.
Yeah. That's right. And he takes them downstairs. Now show them the room first so they can drop their shit and then take them to a room, especially when you see the confines and the restraints of what are delicate objects. Like, you don't want to take a bag in there, swinging it around, knocking over a porcelain doll. Like, but it takes them down to the workshop and shows them everything down there.
It takes them downstairs. That's right. To the but one thing I should mention, I don't know what point it happens, but the elderly lady Hillary gives Jodie, the girl, the Mr. Punch doll.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And there are like weird dolls in all the rooms that we can see. As well. So that kind of
very early on, I swear we get the sense of movement. Like, even if it's just someone like jiggling a doll in this big scene of a whole bunch of dolls and just jiggling one of them. And that's great because it forces the eye to dart around and go, oh, which one? Like in that the recent Invisible Man movie when they had this long take and it's a long sort of silent scene, but he's invisible. So you're thinking, is he in there? Where is he? Oh my God. It's a suspense that's really, really good and plays back to that Hitchcock when we were talking about Psycho recently. The suspense being there right in front of you, and that is a massive fear of the fears that are staring you in the face. Or the ones that you can't even see, which again calls back to Lovecraft. But yes, so he gets the punch doll, and of course this has historic significance because of the old puppet shows which used to happen and still do happen. I did a show out in Mungandai a couple of months ago, and they had a little puppet stall there, and they were doing Punch and Judy, and it was amazing that they're still sort of doing these sort of things. It's like creepy little suitcase that he has with all the little dolls. But it's for those of you who don't know, I think way back in the plague times, it was basically a little comedic duo of these two puppets. Then it was all about domestic violence.
Yeah, pretty much.
Shit out of each other. And that was pretty much how they got to come up. And Swan Thing would do something and either mess it up or try to do something for their own gain, and the other one would just hit them on the head with a rolling pin or something like that. So that's the Punch from Punch and Judy.
And there was always a crocodile trying to steal sausage and
there's always a random third thing that's
and a policeman. I think I seem to remember a policeman involved.
But it's almost like that sort of the English sort of commedia dell'arte. It's a traditional sort of old school thing that would be for the public and for the community. But that's the doll, and it looks like that. It has the big chin and the big nose, because a lot of the times, like again, commedia dell'arte would be accentuating features that the community did not like, and so in commedia dell'arte, they usually had little horns or moles over their faces, which is supposed to insinuate that, and large nose for the Jewish community, and different things like that. And the dolls were no different, really. And it's the same as when you have a baby's doll; they sort of usually personify certain things and usually try and beautify them, or so you'd hope. But she gets Punch, which is fantastic. And a little on the nose, I was just like, oh, okay, it's an iconic one. It's not like an individual one, because I think in the remake it's a completely different, like, new doll. It's like it looks like the doll from The Boy or something like that. It looks like a little boy doll.
Sure. Okay, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's got red hair or something like that. But yeah, it's I like that, and you can see even with the doll that she's handling the whole time, like the hero prop, because a lot of the time when you do films, you would have a hero prop, which would be the main special that's for the close-ups. Like, you don't want to get that scratched or dinged or anything like that. Then you'd have a practical one, which would usually be made out of a lesser material that you could move around with. Then you'd have practical one if it needed to get smashed or hit or rolled over or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And this one, you can see the actual dimples on the side of its mouth, like a Chelsea smile. That looks like it's the one to open its mouth. And I assume that somewhere throughout the process, they decided to allow her to manipulate it herself, just to break that down a little bit further. Because if you're constantly cutting between a wooden set doll with no open mouth to one that can speak or one that can animate its mouth, it would make sense, even though we don't really get to see a lot of it until the final scene. But I thought that was a really interesting choice. Like that, the hero prop was the active physical model. But yeah,
no, that's right. That's good. So like at the same time, we have the kind of rock chick kind of girls, as you said, and they're playing this music, and the Isabel character wants to kind of steal all the antiques in the mansion because everything's old there, so they've got to be worth some money. So so she kind of was trying to encourage the other girl to go with her, but she won't. So she just said, "All right, well, you just stay here, and I'll go off."
Well, also even just before that, I think that's the scene where the old lady hands them the towels and a doily for some reason, because you've got to have a doily. But yeah, and they're asking about the things, whether or not they're valuable to anybody. And it's like it does feel like she's giving them all of the chance, like all of the rope to hang themselves.
Yeah.
In this scene, like, when they start picking up the doll, that's only when she really takes it out of their hands. And she sort of played as a naive in that realization there, but you could easily have had her in the know beforehand, going in there and just removing all of them, like, whatever. But because you do get a sense about this, if they're in control or if it's something else. We don't get to see a lot with it. But this scene I liked because she's a fantastic actress, and even though the whole shot, I think it's one major shot that's all on her point of view. It doesn't really focus too much on the other two, but you can see how good she is with all of that whole development she has through that scene. You can see her character arc within that one scene alone, and it's really nice to see that. And that's what's good about older films too. Too many cuts will, like, you need the organic nature of certain performances. And if you're hiring someone for an actor, and as you say that they're an iconic actor for a great performance before, then why not give them that chance again to enough rope to hang themselves? But this too would have been in a day with film, so you do want to use as much as you can. And I guess it might even be, if you're paying and you know that they're going to be good, it's why waste a reverse shot when you can get the one and done.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
but after that scene, of course, that's when we move on to the idea of, she's gonna be a nasty little girl.
She's a nasty wee girl.
So nasty wee girl.
She so this is a bit where obviously, like, if she would, I don't think she does say the line, but if she did say the line, "I'll be right back," that she's going to be a goner for sure.
Of course.
So she goes off. Yeah, so she goes off to kind of forage for goods. And and
I really like that term, forage for goods, like she's going after truffles.
Yeah.
In this, it's similar to those sort of beats, because as she's going around the house, I was even going to say, I swear that there's a puppet that's sitting on a table that is similar to one of the puppets in Puppet Master.
Oh, yeah.
And it's got like a cone-shaped hat on, like a spinning top sort of hat.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of sitting on a table when she's putting these silver brushes up there, and then she hears a noise and she looks around.
It could well be the same one, and we'd have to kind of investigate that a little bit further, and maybe listeners out there already know the answer. Let us know if that
Comment
is
below.
Because I was saying to you off record, but the two universes could easily bleed into one another. We could be very well sitting in the same universe.
Even with Hitchcock, like, it sort of does give that sort of example to his cameos. Even it's a slight nod, whether or not it was intentionally him saying, "This is my own universe.
Yeah.
It's the idea of him necessarily, like, you know, trying to tie those all things together, same as like Tarantino.
Yeah.
Like, you know, as in, yeah. And it's
Yeah, no,
that's
it.
what, like, yeah, Netflix or Stan needs to do. Just buy up all Stephen King and just say, cool, write a thing that's Stephen King-ish. Like, you know, as in, like, yeah, and we'll just keep making that as a TV show. Never-ending King-a-thon in his universe. Or, like, you know,
well,
all of his nostalgia.
They tried to do that with Castle Rock TV series, but it never really hit off. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm just imagining now. I said Castle Rock, Fraggle Rock, like a was it a Muppet version Stephen King universe. I think that'd be great. Awesome. Yeah, there it is. There we go. Okay, I've got the shot. I'm going to send it to you. We're going to get to the bottom of this.
She then can't. Basically, like the premise of it, like she kind of ends up getting, like she feels like she's being watched, and then and there's odd moments. I think there's a point where one of the dolls turns and looks its head towards her as she goes by, I think, from memory.
We see the eyes, these sort of bloodshot eyes of one of them.
And but we don't really see who her attacker is, but she basically gets attacked and then pushed up against the wall.
Yeah, she's sort of like laid down, like face down on the ground, sort of like arms in a sort of crucifix position, and they're obviously holding her arms. Yeah. And then they repeatedly smash her face into the wall.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, it's great. It's a cool death scene. Yeah. And then I want to say she gets dragged off as well, doesn't she, around the corner or something? And
she sort of like gets spat out of the room. They kick him out of the room after they're done with her.
Yeah, that's it. No, we don't want you anymore.
Like a Louisiana whore.
And yeah, so this is where, and then Jodie is walking around, the little girl is walking around, and she sees the bloody body, and she goes to tell her parents, but they don't pay her any attention. And
they don't pay any.
Yeah, it's like, fuck off. Ralph did that run. And so she ends up going to find Ralph, and he kind of dismisses her at first, and then he notices that she's got these blood-stained slippers on.
You're covered in blood! Covered in blood! How do you get all these blood stains on your slippers? Oh my god!
Oh my god! So she's got bloody slippers on, and so they then go to investigate what happens, but they don't find the body. They find I think the blood's still there from memory, but like there's no body.
Yeah, they see a big sort of blood stain running into a room.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And so then they try to tell Enid, who
I think they go back to the parents, don't they?
I want to say that, yeah.
Yeah, they run back to the parents, and they're like, you know, blood, look at my hands, and they're all like, oh, and then then the other girl comes out, and they're sort of like, you did it, Ralph.
That's right. Yeah, and they all start blaming Ralph. And
yeah, exactly.
And then the dad's like, "You're a pedophile." Yeah,
hanging out with the kid, and the kid's sort of like, you know, I know, like Ralph is the only one I trust, and he's sort of like, yeah, he is.
Yeah. Yeah, and then they, so then all that kind of is a very kind of messy kind of moment, but like they kind of almost want to form a lynch mob against Ralph. But they managed Ralph and Jodie basically run off in separate directions. And then we're left with Rosemary, the stepmom.
Rosemary's not baby.
Rosemary's not baby. So, but Rosemary's the next one to be attacked by the dolls. And this is the moment where...
I really like this one.
Yeah. It's it kind of is... it reminds me a little bit of... I'm just seeing the shot that you just sent through to me. It reminds. Oh yeah. Oh. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I do. I see what you're saying. So what was I saying? So the scene. Yeah, this is great. It reminds me of is it Gulliver's Travels where we get the land of the he's the giant with the land of the little people,
the tiny people. Yeah.
Yeah, It's a similar kind of thing where she gets kind of taken down by a bunch of dolls, essentially. And it's just the bit where we see her, like, does she jump out the window, or she gets...
Yeah. So, like, I'd like to, if we could break it down a little bit more, because I do really like this scene.
No, we can. I just kind of wanted to clarify if that was the.
Yes, she defenestrates herself.
Yes. Okay, so
by jumping out the window. Now,
go ahead, break it down.
Yes, no, I was going to say. So yeah. We've got her in there and doing all of her stuff, but the playing with that sort of comedy idea of going, well, how much damage can these tiny things do? Yeah. They start small and they get bigger. Obviously, they've got a sort of overwhelming power, which you see sort of like zombies or ants or something like that.
Yeah.
But they have tiny little knives, which are so adorable. These tiny little shiny knives, and they're so cute. And like then some of them got scalpel blades, some of them got like what look like darts. And things.
Darts, yeah.
But I loved the ones when she's sort of running along, and then suddenly they're soaring into her ankle with a hacksaw.
Oh yeah, that's brutal.
Like these sort of ones, and I'm like, wow, that's awesome. And I know I was investing more into it when it happened, but she gets stabbed in the back at one point by one of them, and it makes her fall down. And obviously, a dagger that size wouldn't have the same impact as a real dagger. Like it would still significantly hurt, I'm sure, but I imagined it was going into like her spine, so that it stopped her from walking, almost like Wolf Creek-ish. Like again, just investing into the scene. But yeah, she falls forward and everything like this, and then I don't know if she gets spat out or what happens there, but she sort of runs out, and you think that she's going to go haywire and just start kicking them and everything like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, she sees the window and she takes a run at it and just dives out. It's a lot quicker than. Like when recalling it now, it happens a lot quicker. But it's like the first one too. Like as in her smashing her face and then sort of waking up and seeing the girl going, "Help me!" and she still doesn't take it. Which of course this happens as well. The death of the mother happens a lot later. This is after we've seen that flash of the first girl who has her eyes out.
Yeah,
her eyes like in the sockets. Are tied up upstairs, and they've done a sort of brief wander of the house, and all that's happened. Yeah, just before they've sort of met up with everybody. Just to clarify, and you can sort of get a moment where there's a smashing of the radio even as well, because the girl who's there panicking and not knowing what to do.
Yes, that's right.
Is wandering around. And she leaves the room, so she starts wandering the house too. So you've got Ralph out there who's also been bitten by one of the dolls upstairs when they found the girl. And and that sort of confused me as well. But I assumed it was sort of, I don't know. They say at the end they give everyone a sporting chance. It was just like, yeah, but if you're all about morals, like, anyway. So that's what happens. Yeah. But she's obviously still in
very glossed over that. Yeah, I thought that happened a little bit later, but you're right. That happened all before. And great sequence where she's up in the one of them. Is it her that goes up in the attic and the girl's up there tied to the chair, but they completely miss her because she's in the dark.
That I thought that was great because I saw it. I was like, and because again it's really there, and I'm like, oh, what is it? And then you sort of get just a flash of it.
Yeah,
it's great because even what was it? Pet Sematary 2, there was a sequence with a dog in a wedding dress in a rocking chair, which sounds stupid, but it was so iconic. I saw it when I was a kid, and that terrified me because again, it was an animatronic that was sitting in a chair, and it was there. And that was terrifying. It's the same as the transformation in American Werewolf in London. It's terrifying because it's really this prosthetic extending. It's all this sort of stuff. It's great. In this scene too, because you've got so many pain and pressure points which are highlighted by Phillips head screwdrivers like through the
that's
but then also reacting to it by her being able to kick it away, so it's not too much of a strain. It really shows, I guess, more of her character where she jumps out the window of her own volition rather than facing hundreds of these tiny little active dolls.
So so with that as well, like I thought that she'd lived when I first watched that. I just presumed she'd gotten away and that she was going to come back into it somehow.
She very well could. Yeah.
And but I kind of obviously she doesn't.
Well, not in this film. No,
not in this film. But in that instance, I thought, oh, she's gotten away, and she'll come back into the house or something and go, and I thought and go, oh, they're infamy, they've all got an infamy moment.
Oh, that'd be great, yeah.
So, but it wasn't to be. So she jumps out the window, as you said, and
so after that, that's when we've got the other punk girl wandering the hallways still.
She is
with a candle, and we get this creepy scene, which is the old lady in her sort of nightie walking down the hallways with a bassinet, like a pram bassinet thing.
Yeah.
And in it is a doll that I think was like a little boy.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
like a little boy doll, as in not to be like gender specific or anything like that, but it up until what was it? I think only the 1800s they used to call little kids gals.
Yeah,
so, a boy was a servant. So yeah.
Yes. And then
because obviously that
kind of disappears off like into one of the rooms.
Yeah, we don't. That never comes to any fruition, or nothing that we sort of. Yeah, but that's good. What is good about these? I say these like it's probably this specific style of direction, like that they're going down, is that it gives you a stylistic hint just of their routine. And so you don't necessarily need to pay off by that doll coming into something later on.
Yeah.
It could be sequel fodder, like even right at the end there is sequel fodder. But again, it still closes that door. It's not like it's unnecessary. It's more understanding of things that we don't get to see behind the scenes. Because there's a lot of stuff that is discussed that we don't. Their reaction to when they're saying about a witch. There's like, an Iron Maiden with blood in it down
that's right.
cellar, which I thought she was going to be, and like the punk girl was going to end up in. I was just like, oh, she's seen that. It's going to be like the end of Pit and the Pendulum, which was fantastic.
Exactly that, Pit and the Pendulum.
Yeah, so good. Yes. Again, if you haven't seen Pit and the Pendulum, definitely see that. You're
talking Vincent Price one?
Yes, that's the version I saw.
Because also Stuart Gordon directed a version of Pit and Pendulum as well.
Really? What year was that? Do you know offhand? Because I think that'd be a fantastic.
Came after this, so
maybe early 90s.
Yeah. I'll look that up in the background. It's available at the moment on Tubi.
I have to check it out.
91, and it's got Lance Henriksen in it.
Oh, cool. Nice. Yeah, well, even this film having a sequel of Dolls, I know I mentioned it before. I haven't seen it, but I'm eager to see it now, just because I did appreciate and was unexpected how well the story was going to be crafted in this. And I know that probably sells it. It's like, it's not Citizen Kane, and I don't mean that, but as in it sucked me in, it allowed me to enjoy it. It wasn't too much, too far. It was kept it contained where I knew morally what had to happen, and it kept pretty well within those boundaries and stuff like that. Coupled together with all of the other fun. The only thing I didn't get was in this next sequence that we're talking about with the other punk girl.
Yeah.
Is the only thing that she did wrong is that she was English.
That's criminal in itself, surely.
Like, well, I was thinking, is this like just an American dig because it's like against the empire, or because she doesn't technically do anything besides smoking in the room and being a little bit disrespectful, which you could put down to influence of peer pressure. She sort of gets attacked out of nowhere.
But she also had, maybe it's that she's willing to turn a blind eye to.
Yeah, it could be that guilt by association. Yeah. She didn't try and prevent it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Which will always remind me of the final episode of Seinfeld, but there you go. So you're right. So this next sequence, you're right, is where we see her name's Enid, and so she's out and about, kind of in the house, and this is where I want to say she goes back up into the attic again. I want to say
so she's venturing around and stuff. She's seen the creepy doll, the pram and stuff like that, and then she goes back upstairs or upstairs for the first time. We don't know, with a Zippo lighter, I think, is her only means of lighting. And that's where we get the interaction with her friend Isabella, was it?
Isabel, yeah.
And she's sitting down, sort of like legs spread, and there's a whole bunch of blood on the floor, and you can sort of see the silhouette of her hair and the shining off of these big, dull, open eyes. And then, she gets closer to her with the light, and she finally gets revealed with the lightning flash that she has these doll eyes in this cavity of her face, but also her skin has been sort of transformed better than Botox into a sort of porcelain type face.
Yeah.
And as she leads forward, the two eyes roll out and into the blood, and then she feels around for them, picks them up, and holds them up next to her face, like in the poster.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't know if that was needed or if dialogue was needed. As in, like, it's like, let me just look at you with my good eye or something like that, or let me get a good look at you. And then she picks them up and just holds them in front. I didn't feel like the poster needed to be literally translated on film.
I think I like this bit. I think.
Yeah.
For me.
I love it too. I was just wanting her to put them back in the sockets.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Yeah. Like the wrong way round. Go off.
Yeah, exactly. She'll be cross-eyed.
Like a bit kind of like
an old Dave Allen routine.
Kind of reminds me of Beetlejuice a little bit.
Yes.
So yeah, you're right. So yeah,
and then
it was a great little moment. It's a good little sequence. And I enjoyed that kind of component.
Right then, straight after that.
Yeah, but
sorry, you go.
Oh, so I was going to say we don't see her comeuppance straight away, though, do we? Because
a punk girl.
Yeah, because it intercuts with the dad trying to get busy with Rosemary, not realizing she's a corpse.
Yes,
and that whole sequence as well. So I think we get these kind of cutaway moments between him and not realizing she's dead.
I think she has a little bit of a battle with them because this is a sort of a loaded scene too, because it sort of establishes the idea of what is under the dolls or inside the dolls, because you had that sequence where the cowboys right next to her, which is yip yay, yip yay, yip yay. Love him. Yeah, exactly. So close to got Speedy Gonzales. Yeah. But lassos her arm, or I think it is the one with the lighter, and pulls her towards her, and he gets set alight. And so it was just like, oh, okay, so we know that fire hurts them. I think before this too, we've also seen the father walking around with the punch doll, and he's tried to set it on fire, and he dropped it on the ground, and it ran away.
Yeah.
So he's seen it being animated as well. Yeah. But anyway, so the he catches on fire, and even still, he's going yay, or something like this when he's burning. It's hilarious. But then all of the other dolls creep around her. She takes a belt off, which says "Boy Toy" on it, and it's like a big, thick buckle that she starts swinging around like a mace or a morning star. And smashes their faces open, and you get to see these like little skull or these little aliens.
Yeah. And there's a moment there where you think, "Oh, hold on, is she going to be is she going to be proving herself here?" And
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Well, I was exactly proving yourself from what point? I mean, obviously not from the doll's point of view.
No. That's.
but no, exactly. I was still thinking. Yeah, exactly. I was thinking, what's the reason for her to now get killed?
Yeah,
just by association, I don't know. But still, even if they're demonic, she smashes their faces, and we almost have like a hint of Gremlins, where one of their backs smashed open and it sort of bubbles away.
Yeah,
and they start to bubble. So obviously, when they're smashed, the magic is lost and they start to bubble away.
Yeah.
But again, it's that hint of lore which then allows you to sort of go, oh, okay, so do they grow inside it? Is it like a pod? Is it a magic spell? What is it from that? Unfortunately, then I just seeing it now, we go through the next sequence where she runs out of the hallway after smashing a whole bunch of those things and gets confronted by the firing squad.
Yes.
Slow motion was great.
Being
so
shot.
Good. Yeah. She gets shot by that first once, and then in the back, and then lays down. It almost has a hint of that Psycho scene with the blood coming out of the mouth and the eyes. Yeah, and then it cuts straight to the flickering of the Zippo lighter, which dies, and its fuel dies, and it just gets smothered. I thought that was really nice too. Again, it's just those hints of death. Speaking of nice, when we're talking about those sequences intercut of the husband with the wife, and she's dead. Her face is under the sheet, covered by a white sheet, and he sits down, and you just slowly start seeing blood pouring out. On the sheet, and I was like, "That's fantastic!" It's out of his field of view, so he wouldn't see it. But it gets the sense of like something smelly and has to go and have a bath, which I assume is hinting that her corpse is smelling, and which, of course, it's not because it's rotting at this point. It's because you shit yourself when you die.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what I think is the justification there.
No, that's what I think too. Yeah, and I just love the fact that he thinks it's him and goes
In
off.
which case, maybe this happens all the time because there should be a brown stain on the back of those sheets.
Yeah. Which is true.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't necessarily be looking at that though, would he?
No.
Well, unless she always shits the bed and it's just something new.
Poop. Exactly. Maybe it's
like,
just what she's into.
Done it again.
She likes 1950s jazz. She's into scat.
Nice.
Yay! Thanks, Sammy Davis Jr.
Okay, so all right, so where are we? We're rambling and raving as we always do.
Yes.
So
and
we're forgetting like Ralph is also in the mix as well.
I was going to say, so throughout this, they're still wandering the house, and now they've gotten to the point of going into that room. Now, I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be the room that they both heard the giggles from before.
Yes, that's my interpretation, yes.
Yeah. Now, again, too, like, Ralph is walking around the house relatively early, and she says something about elves, and he listens to the door, and hears a giggling. Now, yes, you would put that off to yourself, but someone has told you about that, and, I don't know, you would sort of piece things together pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I think any person would, rather than going, nope, it doesn't exist, if it's there biting you, it doesn't matter whether it exists or not. You've got to either reason with it, stop it, like, or something. But this is where sort of they've set this room up, and that's the other good thing about good storytelling is coming back to little pieces. Like, the Teddy bit was sort of like thrown out there, and I was kind of hoping there was going to be a big boss fight with Teddy. But that was a beautiful sequence in the beginning. But we've got the door now, which they ended up going into because now it's unlocked. And they see that it's just another storeroom full with more dolls. And I for some reason, I was hoping that this was sort of going to be justified as the old man saying, no, this is where the naughty dolls, these ones have been put in time out. And I was like, that's cool, because then that sort of like, raises a whole different other question.
Yeah.
But then they obviously get confronted, and this is where the exposition dump happens, where the little girl basically... No, he has to come out with it saying that, they're all alive. And she's just like, haven't you known all along? And she's like, fuck's sake, kid. Like, at what point, does this whole Toy Story charade begin? But even at that point, this Sean Austin stand-in is...
nice.
Yeah, but also, too, what was it? He overplays when he... Yeah, when he goes to run out. He has this big sort of almost slapstick comedy moment where he grabs her arm and then just screams out like, go, or stuff like that. And he's just like, who is this for? And he starts kicking all of the dolls that are in front of him in his way, trying to get out, and they all get upset and start attacking him.
Yeah.
It's like little jester dolls.
It's one moment, isn't it, where he just he completely loses it, and it almost defies the character that we've seen before leading up to it.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
And it also, it almost makes me think that it's been a directorial choice where they've said, give us another take, give us a, push to the extreme, and that's, one of them. Because it, even when watching The Shining, there's a lot of takes that are still left in the film where if you slow it down enough, you'll see where Jack Nicholson, will barrel the camera very quickly.
Yeah. He's
walking out of the room after he says, I'm not going to let you fuck this up for me. He barrels it ever so slightly. And then when he's doing the door thing, we're saying, check it out. And he does this playful little tap thing and giggles. It's that sort of callback to, you can see in actors where they're not sure. They're looking towards the director of saying, is this right? Yeah. They just want a little bit of that's what I'm happy with what you're doing. And that shot felt like, to me, it was one of those. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's been something like that. Where they've said just lose it, and he hasn't been able to lose it completely, maybe because he's a bit more of a comedic or character actor. But also, too, in these scenes, you would have been working with inanimate objects or puppets that weren't viscerally moving. The stop motion that's done in this is worked, I think, very sparingly and beautifully done, whereas you don't pick up on it unnecessarily. I watched it in a version that had a slight drop in frame rate, I think it was.
Okay.
And so when that got to it, it was a little bit choppy.
Okay.
But the movements were still okay because the brain was still able to sort of process and work with all of that.
Yeah.
But this is with the scene. So Ralph's been attacked by all of them, and you have the Jester 2 doll which jumps out, which I didn't know if that was a poltergeist sort of little play. like, you know, was in it. Might have been a little homage, but I don't know if that was before or after this.
It would have been before. Poltergeist would have been before.
Yeah. But again, is it homage, or is it just like, you know, it works well because it's also too what that kind of doll would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, he gets attacked by him and sort of gets like all barreled up, and that's when she's turning around and says, "No, don't do it," and they all stop and listen to her. And at this point, I didn't know whether or not they were listening to her because she was holding punch, or because she was a quote unquote pure soul, you know, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because I almost got it from the sort of, no, it's hierarchy. She's holding the doll. She's holding our master. But yeah, they obviously decide then, like, you know, to whether or not to let them out because they wanted to kill Ralph a second ago. And he did act rash. He shouldn't have started destroying. If you found out something is alive, don't try and kill it. That's usually a good like starting point that it's not going to antagonize them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you just killed all my mates.
Exactly. Like what was it in Men in Black? It was just like, oh, sorry, was that your auntie? Yeah.
So so they do decide to let them go, of course.
Yeah, and this is where it's intercut in between, because this is where we cut back and we see the husband try and get fresque and ask for a big wet one and try and kiss the bloodied sheets of his wife, who, when he takes off the sheet, her eye is sort of exposed out onto a cheek in a very hostile sort of like looking thing. Yeah, and she sort of rolls about. And now, I didn't know what was happening here. It was obviously supposed to be, I think, a dead body that was just like rigor mortis and holding on. But it looked like to me like she was in the last throes of life. Yeah. And so I was just like, oh my God. It's like it took the sort of comedy away from it, because I was thinking, Jesus Christ, she's trying to get help. But it falls on the ground with her eye out, and then he instantly thinks that it's Ralph, that guy who we just met.
Yeah.
Not anybody else, not the people who own the house. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's Ralph. It's all Ralph.
Yeah, but within that too, the character has a little bit of emotion too, because when they're having the fight downstairs just after this, which we'll get to in a moment, I'm jumping ahead, he has a tear that comes to his eye. So he really did care about her.
Yes.
As much as he was a drunk, as much as he was whatever, he definitely had a care for that woman. So that was at least nice. I thought, again, that's a nice sort of little thing you put in there. It's playing the same elements of turmoil, mental turmoil that some of the best stories like The Shining and things play on. And like, was it? I'm thinking not The Edge, but I'm sure there's a lot of books like The Edge, like Hatchet and stuff like this. When you put at odds in a situation, you have to make a decision, and it's the hard choice you have to make, and things like that. It really plays well. And in this film, it was surprising to see, even though it's probably just a piece of glycerin that's there. But yeah, so they get saved by the dolls. They allow them to leave.
Back on that, because I have to admit I missed that, but I'll look back on it and check it out.
Yeah, no, I saw it. It was just, I thought that was a nice little.
So you're right. So then the dad character goes on a bit of a rampage to try and find Ralph. He thinks he's killed his betrothed, and there's this great moment where they end up having a big fight sequence. Yeah. There's this great moment where Ralph kind of tries to protect the dolls from being hurt, because he's become like a friend of theirs now, and he's trying to just deflect them and.
Or he picks one up to use it as a weapon.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you hear like a sigh, and he goes, "Oh!" and he cradles it like a baby, and then like ducks and moves. And then the father goes through like a big row of dolls, and they're like, "No, stop!" and everything like that. And it's intense. I'm trying to remember actually when the little girl gets knocked out, because they're obviously engaged in a massive fight scene, and he only punches the father once. Ralph only punches the father once. But the whole time I was waiting for them, like, lead him into the doll room. Just open the door and throw him in.
Push him in.
So you get this whole turmoil thing where the father's jumped to conclusions and just really wants to kill Ralph, but he pushes the girl aside, and she knocks her head on the cellar floor. Yeah. At least is justified.
There's a point where he grabs the punch doll, though, isn't there, first, and he smashes it.
No, well, this is towards the end of the sequence. He knocks Ralph out, and that's when Punch turns around and throws a dart into his hand when he's about to like do the final blow to Ralph. Yeah, and so that's when he sort of rips it out. And yeah, this sequence here that I was thinking it might have even been green screen or some form of compositing to get the motion of the puppet in full scale running from one place to another around that table, because he turns over the table and starts destroying everything. And as he's destroying everything, we see a shot of the passed out Ralph. The door opens behind him and they start leading him in there. And instantly I'm going, oh God, are they going to like eat him? Like, as in, is it now like, oh great, now all bets are off? And I was like, oh shit. But then they took, I think you just see the slippers of the little girl going in there as well. And I was like, oh, okay, so they're saving him. What are they going to do, burn the place? Like, you know, I was thinking, or the firing squad or something. But the other thing too, in this fight sequence, playing with the idea of the silliness of it, they're dolls. And so having him, like, he picks up the drill and he then he follows the cord. You can see his eyes following the cord to the extension lead, and he just unplugs it. Great. Like, you know, it's really good, those sort of things. And that's where the comedy in horror works really well, because any good film should be told where the audience can see what's happening before the characters know.
Yes.
And so they can say, oh, do this, don't go through there, like, you know, and that's what you want the audience to have involvement in, the want for the characters or the despising of the characters, which is really good at the end of this too, where, as you say, he ends up smashing Punch's face open, which is hollow too inside. I thought that was strange.
Yes,
it's hollow. Yeah. But after he does that,
kind of, because like you said, the earlier ones looked like there was something inside them, and this one was just an empty shell of a doll.
Smoke.
But, yeah.
But
he smashed the thing pieces, and this is where then the two elderly owners of the house appear. And David kind of calls Hillary a witch. And there's that real deadpan moment where Gabrielle kind of says something along the lines, well, yes. She is.
Oh, he's figured it out.
Yes. Oh, dear.
I love that. He's figured it out. It's such a good line.
So
it's well written.
It is. I love it. They have this bit where they say that and every visitor that comes to their house essentially has this opportunity to be friendly to the dolls. And if they're kind to their dolls, then they won't get hurt at all. But all visitors will be killed if they are nasty people. And then this is where Hillary then does some kind of devilry kind of witchcraft and starts transforming David into this kind of Mr. Punch-like doll.
Yeah. I thought this was interesting when watching it, because I was like, oh, okay, now we're focusing on the antagonist, where I thought you'd be dead by now.
Yes.
But it sort of takes this thing, and you could easily pull this off and say, oh, this is where it got cheesy or it got too much. But I don't know, again, along the lines of how they did American Werewolf in London, I mean, it must be painful. It would be painful.
I reckon, and I quite liked it, the whole kind of shrinking man kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well, and it's that almost Dorian Gray karma sort of idea, which I liked about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it also, too, I imagined that there would be sequels after this or something like that, like with Puppet Master. But I also, too, felt like the witchcraft or whatever it was also going to be more confining, because it stops him from throwing the mallet at them right at the end, just before he turns. So it made me think that, like, he's now in this constant torment of purgatory where he has to act like the other dolls did.
Yeah, that's right.
But it also, explains all of the other ones, especially that, like, I think the cowboy one or one of the other ones which lets them go, and he has this bloodshot eyes, and you're going, oh, wow, that's why they look so real.
Yeah, and that exactly. All of a sudden you're like, oh, hold on, these are all the souls of these people that have come to the house and essentially, and they've been trapped there.
Exactly,
and then and so then so he as we said, the dad becomes this Punch-like doll, and this is then cuts to the next morning, isn't it? And Harlock's basically kind of tell Ralph and Jody that they're free to go, and and Ralph's car just happens to be just kind of outside ready to go, and it's all this kind of like dream-like kind of end to it.
It's very pleasant ending. But even with that last sequence where he's transforming into Punch, the old man, there's a focus and a close up on the watch, his fob watch.
Yes.
And then once he's shrunk right down, he closes the fob watch.
Yeah.
I don't know. I love that, like, because the director might have been just be going, okay, how does this magic work? I don't know, but let's show this. So it insinuates that it's whatever. It could even just be looking at going, only through the hours of this time can this happen. And we've both got to be crossing our fingers, or we had to have eaten cake 3 times a week, whatever. Yeah, exactly. But it cuts straight to, it's bright now. It's no longer stormy. And like in the beginning, they set up in that first dinner situation where it was like, it's like forever nighttime. It's the longest day in the world. But then we also get Ralph with a really weird response where he's like, the dolls, and barrels the camera, right? Like breaks the fourth wall straight ahead. Yeah. You're like, why? Why, Ralph? Why?
Why, Ralph? Why do you do this? Yeah. Why? And then he just and then carries on as if nothing's happened.
Oh yeah.
So he's kind of
I like his urgency to get out though.
Yeah, he wants to get out of there. He knows that there's crazy shit. So he's the one that's trying to get in the car and go, and there's a moment, isn't there, where the Hardwicks, the elderly couple, basically say that because Jodie says, "Where's my dad?" and he said, "Oh, he's gone. He's left this note.
He's left a note." And then, where's my friends? They left a note.
Yeah, I realise you should stay with your mum after all. Yeah. And there's a point where, was it Ralph says something about the girls? And then Gabrielle says, "Oh yeah, P.S. We've taken the girls with us."
Yeah. P.S. right at the bottom, and then he goes to look at it.
Yeah.
And he scrunches it up and throws it in the fire, and it goes up like flash paper.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. So then they kind of go, right, well, let's just go. And he said, "Oh, can you please, Ralph, can you please take her back home," essentially. Which is all a bit weird. It was a bit weird the way that kind of gets tied up in the end.
Now, he also leaves him something. Now, financially, what does he leave him? Because he says that the 2 people who are obviously dead, or dolls now, sorry, Punch and blah, 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 left him something. And he was like, they didn't seem like the generous type.
Oh, yeah.
But what was it? It wasn't the car.
No.
Which we'll get to in just a second after this scene. But it was something else. Was it money?
I thought it was money, but then where did the money come from?
Yeah, exactly. He hasn't got the ability to wire stuff. They didn't have any cash on them.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a bit bizarre. But yeah.
Anyway, so but it's good too because he's still trying to reason it together. His self-preservation is still...
Yeah, that's right.
You know, going, it wasn't a dream. It can't have been a dream. I still can't necessarily think what's going on, but just smile and don't go to the second location. Yeah, which I guess you'd argue would be there.
Yeah. So then he says, "Oh no!" And there's a point where they're just about. I don't know if I'm jumping over something you were about to say.
No.
They Jodie goes to go, but then she gives the teddy bear back to.
I like that scene.
Like, that he'd be better off here. And then she hops back into the car and. And there's a moment where it says something about coming back next some holidays or something. Yeah,
so just before that's when they're just leaving, and he said like, "Okay, we better go," and stands up and walks out, and they're just like, "We'll come back anytime because we've grown very fond of you." And you get the idea of going, "Oh, are they thinking that he could turn nasty and that we want to turn him into a doll, or something like that?" And she says, "Oh, I want to say goodbye to Mr. Punch."
Yes.
And then they go, "Oh yeah," but it's great because the old lady has this quick flinch towards her husband.
Yeah.
And it's nice, like little homage things like that too. But takes him out, hugs him, kisses him, puts it back. But then he says something. It's like, "Bye, you little shit," or something like that. The doll, and that's what makes them go, "Okay, yeah, we're getting out of here." And again, Ralph runs out of the house and like lifts her up and pulls her arm out of the socket. But this is where I went, "That's Ralph's fucking car. That's Ralph's car. That's the car that picked the 2 girls up.
Yeah.
That's the car that was in the rain.
That's it.
This car that was, oh my God.
Yeah.
That's Ralph's car?
Convertible, like no.
Who the fuck is Ralph? No, that's not just a convertible. That's like one of those, like, something that you'd have in the 1920s, 1915.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got like spokey type tires. I wouldn't be surprised if it cranked at the beginning, at the front. But no, I loved that moment when handing back the teddy bear. I thought that was beautiful, and it was just that idea of going, oh, it's just that pure soul, that like all this sort of stuff. And I thought that was really nice too. I sort of left it open to sequel, but it doesn't need to happen. What I also liked about this too is they look like a lovely old couple in this ending. She's wearing pink. She's wearing like a lot of bright colors. It's all during the day. It's like a lovely autumn. The sun's out. Like, it's a very lovely sort of thing. So you don't know if it's them or if it's like, the house, if it's, I don't know. Even when you look at the boy and you sort of get the idea that they haven't got a lot of control within their house or their world, but might even be just their life, like, as in they're allowed the privilege to live in this place that the dolls do everything. Because even when they were talking about, we got your car out of the bog or whatever it was, I was like, I bet that was all of the dolls.
I reckon it was too.
It must have been. They must have found Teddy. It must have, like...
Teddy's pitch team, Yeah, that's right. And but the very end bit, like, so Ralph drives off, but we have like this shot outside the mansion where we see some new people have their car stuck in the mud. Yeah, and this man
exact same spot.
Yes, that's right. And then we see a man get out, and he's looking a bit of a dick. And
she's looking pretty cuntish.
There's a young boy there.
And a young girl. There's a young boy and a young girl.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. And they're sort of like, again, this is again where I was like, in long shots, you have to like, usually exaggerate a little bit more and be a bit more over top. Yeah. So I was just like, oh God, please let all the kids' sockets be okay. But they sort of do a bit of this overwalking. I was waiting for the mother to throw a toy. To throw a toy, and I was like, come on. Now, I don't know if you know anything about the production of this film, but it feels like to me that was a model that was just built for the sake of it. I'm not too sure if it would be.
I'm not sure of that, but yeah.
It almost looks like a miniature in that last shot when it's happening. But just before that last shot too, which is a lovely long shot that takes ages and has the credits going over it, you have the shot of the dolls on the mantle inside with Punch and with the female one with her hair done up in a little towel.
Right.
Yeah. And they look at each other and then they look back, but they sort of like shake. And it looks like to me like the motor's jammed, like, as it's going like this. But I don't know if that's supposed to be them shaking their head, maybe? Like going, no? Like, they disapprove, but they can't do anything about it. They're this tortured purgatory.
I think so. That was how I took it. The latter, to be honest. That's what I thought. That they're kind of resigning to their fate a little bit. Yeah.
That's cool. Again, I still think that second English chick, the only justification they have is that she was English. They say we gave everyone a sporting chance, but I don't know about her.
You were talking about that there was pockets there where it felt like it would be a sequel was on the cards. It does. I think there was potential talk about doing a sequel, and that Stuart Gordon was actually interested in doing one, and it would pick up with Judy and Ralph back in Boston.
Because at the end when they're driving off, there's the thing of saying, "Do you ever want a wife or a my mum is beautiful, she's young. Do you want a daughter?" And which was nice too. I really liked that.
Yeah.
The optimism at the end.
Yes. Yeah, and so that's where it would pick up apparently with Ralph, with the mum and Judy, and
and the daughter growing up.
One day, Judy would get this box sent from England, and it has the toy makers, Gabrielle and Hilary were dolls.
Or would she inherit the house? Because they pass away probably eventually.
That's it. Interesting. But it never came to fruition.
Or they find the father's body.
Yeah.
They're like, he's really small and he's in this porcelain shell. But he said you did it. But yeah, no, I almost half expected this to have like 600 sequels to it. I honestly did. Even when I saw that poster when I was a kid, I imagined this was a sequence of films. But so surprising to see it's not, and it went more Puppet Master route. But I guess it would have been a very similar premise.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, so when, as we said, 2 years later, Puppet Master would come out, and then Puppet Master has had something like 13 or 14 installments in that franchise. It's crazy. Yeah, so it's definitely is the one that's kind of led the charge to there.
Yeah. Well, and that even too with writing the lore behind the story. I mean, even with what was it, Hellraiser? Again, I'm remembering there's so many elements of that you can take apart and make something of it differently. And they never really went into just the idea of someone wanting to get the pleasure side of that pleasure and pain world, and everything to do with that, or the origins of the box itself. I know that they have a sequel where they explain Pinhead's origin and stuff like that, but I don't know. I feel like it should be a lot earlier than just the Second or First World War.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I agree with that.
Yeah, but within that, this film seems exactly like that. I mean, just take the witchcraft element. Take nothing else but the witchcraft element, and the idea that you can capture souls in objects, or you can do something along those lines with the witchcraft. I mean, that's a huge element which could be very creepy. You've got obviously animated objects, which you could play that whole Pet Cemetery route of loved ones or loved things, taxidermied objects. I mean, hell, shit, that'd be terrifying. But there was an old tale, I think it was on Stephen King's Amazing Stories, and it was that was sort of like a Twilight Zone sort of little short stories that usually had a karma element to it. And one of the stories was about these kids who made a potion that you could bring anything that you poured it onto life. So you wanted a beautiful Playboy model, you would pour it onto the Playboy model, and they would materialize in front of you. Too much, and it would make them too big, too little, and it would make them all fall aparty and stuff like this. But right at the end, it teases at like the end of the thing of the liquid falling onto a picture of Freddy Krueger, and so the next thing was supposed to be, now he's going to come out and they have to deal with him. Those sort of elements, I really like it when homage is paid, especially in this sort of way. Even when we're talking about with Psycho with Ed Gein, you don't go, this is Ed Gein, they're living in the same house, they're the exact same person, they wear a cap like this. It's you take the little elements of it that then can spur on completely new stories, and that's where the intrigue is allowed to flourish. And especially, as you say, at the beginning of this, it wasn't just the one man, it was his crew, his team, which did the effects, did the lighting,
that's right.
And how it to be seen. I'm surprised it doesn't have a bit more of a folklore sort of thing, because this feels like it'd be a fantastic Halloween type thing. I want to say for the whole family, but I know that a lot of people wouldn't like it because of the certain gore elements. I personally think that with the YouTube age and hell, the news in America at the moment, I mean, this is a fun-hearted, good, intentional, a film with good intentions. Where at least it keeps that karma idea on the head, and it's understood to that home point. The only thing being about the mention of the pygmy people.
Doesn't quite.
Which it does, stuff like that doesn't stop me from watching old Looney Tunes cartoons and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I still love Song of the South. I grew up on that, and
same.
Yeah,
I know. Which when you look at it now, it's obviously trouble.
Yeah. But it's important too to imagine its cultural significance both now and then, to be able to communicate to that. And anyone who says we shouldn't be able to talk about it is really just going to make the problem bigger. But
that's it.
But I'm keen to now check out the remake, at least because I would hope to see how much of those good plot point elements have been kept through. I don't think it's going to be anywhere as good.
Probably not.
But I feel like it's a tall card to follow. It was like that film about the girls in the dorm house. It was Black Friday or something like that. That was a great film, and then to remake that, it was sort of disappointing.
Black Christmas, you were talking about.
Black Christmas. But this I like it too, because it leaves you optimistic. It keeps you in a high frame. And not a lot of horror films do that. And I know that a lot of people might like like again, I watched Little Shop of Horrors recently, like a bootlegged version of the musical on stage, which of course has the original ending where Audrey 2, the plant, wins and takes over the world, and kills Audrey and kills Seymour and eats everything. It's depressing in the sense, and I think on film that would be a depressing ending. It wouldn't have worked theatrically that way. That's why they ended up doing the happy ending, which I loved and I still adore. But on stage with that element of, you know what you're getting into. Like, and I'm a musical theatre fan, so it's the idea of being able to have that element of disbelief suspended for that performance is part of the enjoyment of it. It's the same as people who like plays and go and see those in live theatre. It's the same sort of thing, anything sort of life. And horror is that the closest element where we can break down those, I guess besides romance, where you can actually get an emotional connection that's going to make you feel something within your body, make your not blood boil, but your goosebumps, you know, things like that, make you cry, make you want the hero to win, strive for the ones that you connect with.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And it's strange that a film like this would sort of make me say all those things, but I think it's a lot of the time you don't see a lot of horror films with such a positive.
Yeah, but I wonder though that's because of the fantasy element that's at play underneath it. It's like you were saying, if it did have a sequel, the witchcraft element would need to come to fore.
Doesn't even need to be explained much more, but it could be utilized exactly in a different method.
Yeah, that's right. So, and I think that's why it works. Because it slips into the suspension of
disbelief.
Disbelief kind of stuff, and you kind of get away with doing stuff, and your imagination. And I like the whole element of, like, you know, there was that great image of, like, it was like a meme that went round a few moons back now, but where there's a sleeping kid and the teddy bear standing there with a sword unsheathed, protecting the kid from, like, these monsters or something that's coming up. So it's this idea of the teddy bears there protecting its owner from the evil.
That's beautiful.
And it kind of reminded me of that, and that whole bit with the teddy bear at the beginning, you know, it kind of reminded me of that a little bit. And it would have been kind of, like you said, it would have been cool to see Teddy kind of try and hit itself against these kind of demonic dolls.
Actually, and even just on the Rocky Horror thing, because my mind went to a couple of things. Even like when they're walking through the house, and the big, beautiful house interiors were just gorgeous.
Yes.
But that reminded me even of like Clue or like the Haunting and things like that.
Yes.
Which were beautiful. But then like the switchblade that Eddie keeps in his teddy in Rocky Horror, like for some reason, because he's wearing wearing a red tie, a bow tie.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, for some reason I kept on just going, make sure you hold the head and the body, just because otherwise the switchblade's going to come out. Which of course in the song Eddie's Teddy, that's what the teddy bear is. The switchblade knife hidden in his teddy bear. Which again, great musical, great.
Oh, it's a great film. Okay, so speaking of great films, then, so let's wrap this one up. So so where do we stand with this? Like, we both say we like this. Would you recommend it though to a modern audience?
This is a hard one, because I feel like it's something fun, but it's not necessarily one that you would want to sit down and invest all your time with, especially if 80s films aren't your thing. Having said that, though, I think show them the poster, and then I don't know.
Then twice.
And so, have you ever seen this? Have you ever wanted to see this?
Yeah.
But it falls into that same basket as Puppet Master 2. So it might even be one of those things that just whilst you're on a roll with that style, it follows over.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Or even if it's a film, maybe you want to introduce younger audiences to horror. Like I'm thinking teens, like, you know, when they're at an age where they can take blood and know where, you know, things are separated. Because I was even going to bring up Chucky when we were talking about the whole magic element, and I loved one of the things I loved about that was that magical element where it was like, that's the best idea for this serial killer to put himself into an object, let his body die, and now he can find something else, move on, or, you know, seemed like a great premise, especially when he's allowed to talk at the end of that and he's just like, yeah, you bitch. I thought that was fantastic. So and scared the shit out of me when I was a kid because it was another inanimate object coming to life.
Yeah, that's right.
But also too, it could also be a good element to get people into a B movie with a positive ending, because a lot of people do. The reason a lot of people don't like horror films is because they don't want to feel like shit at the end, and so you can't necessarily recommend like Requiem for a Dream to some people. At least I don't feel like you can, because it's like it's a ride, guys. You've got to sit there and like sit down and get strapped in at the end. You'll need a couple of days. But like I wouldn't call this B grade, but it's definitely not the highest grade. Like even on Rotten Tomatoes, the tomato meter sets it at a 64%. The audience says 51, so it's like socially around that sort of questionable era. But the older it gets, I think it's going to become more popular. I think it's probably going to be one of those.
I do wonder about that, because you're right. It does bridge that gap of like it could easily kind of slip through the cracks of it, and not be kind of. Have certain audiences won't respond kindly to it because of the far-fetched kind of campness that's within it. But I don't know. It's like I said, like as we preface the podcast discussions, the more I'm kind of watching Stuart Gordon's work, the more I just dig his humor, and I dig the way he kind of made his film. So I liked it, but I think some audiences would struggle with connecting with it though.
Yeah.
Cool,
having said that, there's so much shit that's being released now. I mean, like, it's a good. It's only, what was it for me? I think it was only about an hour and 20 minutes, just under that. So it's also good to see something that's short, succinct, to the point, and the amount of stuff that's crammed into it. That's why I hope you didn't mind. But being able to break down things like that fight scene with her. And those fantastic moments where you're getting these points, because even in like Hostel, what I didn't like about Hostel was it was pretty much just that.
Yeah.
Whereas at least this, you're going, well, we don't like this character. We want her to go through this pain, and we also see her reacting to avoid this pain. So that's what's so good about it. Whereas in Hostel, it's more just like, no, look, wouldn't this hurt? Yes, it would hurt. Woo! I don't know, but each to their own. I think it still stands the test of time.
Yeah. That's true. We'll just wait for the Hostel musical to come out. That'll be kind of interesting.
I'm sure it'll happen.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, look, I've really enjoyed the journey, and as I said, reopening this one and looking at it. So thanks for coming on board and discussing this one and dissecting it with me, Richard.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Anytime.
Anytime. Always good to have you on board. So until then, stick around for our last podcast on the Stuart Gordon work, which will be Dagon, and we'll kind of have a little look at that. And there's a bit more of a more recent one of his work, but again with the Lovecraftian themes well and truly entrenched in that one. So stick around for that one when we release that next. Until then, I'm your host, Saul Muerte, and once again, a big thank you to Richard Lovegrove. Goodbye.
Thank you, good sir.
You're listening to the Surgeons of Horror podcast. Music supplied by Peter Nezik. For more discussions or podcasts, head over to surgeonsofhorror.com or head over to our Facebook and Twitter sites for the latest news and updates.